Hello everyone and welcome to your final lesson of first grade. Can you believe it? Today I have a really exciting lesson for you. It's called Elephant Toothpaste. So pretty interesting name, and I hope that kind of perks your curiosity so you're wondering what exactly are we doing. I sent out that list to all of the families about what you will need for today, so you should have those things with you right now. If you don't, I'm going to kind of review them real quick, and then you'll just pause the video so that you can go and get those materials and do some science experiments alongside of me. So on Friday, we had a small explosion in our mouth by that citric acid mixing with the base of the baking soda. And then we did an explosion in a bag where our vinegar was the acid and it mixed with that baking soda packet. And some of your bags even might have popped open because the pressure was so great. Well, today we are going to continue working on having those chemical reactions, but our explosion is actually going to be in this bottle. And you're going to want a few things on hand to make sure you don't get your kitchen or your outside too messy when we're doing a little bit of our science experiment today. So for those of you who are doing it with me, awesome. For those of you who are just going to watch the experiment, that's fine too, because you're still going to learn something. So here's what you need, just in case you forgot, or if you have all your materials in front of you, kind of go through and check them off to make sure you're not missing anything. All right, I've got my little cheat sheet here just to make sure I don't forget anything while I'm doing this video. So what we want to make sure we have is your hydrogen peroxide. So if you went to the beauty supply store, yours probably looks really similar to mine. If you just got some hydrogen peroxide from Meijer or Walmart or one of the other grocery stores, yours might look a little bit different, but we want to have our hydrogen peroxide. You want to have an empty bottle. It can be an old pop bottle or an old water bottle, but you do want an empty plastic bottle. You're going to want to make sure you have your dry yeast. Yours might have come in just like a small square packet. I got some from my mother-in-law, so she just kind of scoops some into a container for me. But you're going to want your yeast. We want to make sure that we have some warm water. So my warm water is in here. We want to make sure that we have some dish soap. So my dish soap is in here. It's blue, but instead of it being in a big plastic bottle, we just have it in this bottle. Your food coloring. Your small cup, it could be any kind of cup. A funnel. So we're going to need this to pour our mixture into our bottle without making a huge mess, and also to ensure that we see the chemical reaction inside the bottle rather than some of it dripping out. You're going to want some safety goggles. I could not find my sunglasses, but don't you worry. I've got my safety goggles right here. So if you have some goggles, whether they're sunglasses or real goggles or some work goggles, make sure you get those out for our experiment. You're going to need a few things to measure with. So I've got 2 tablespoons because one's going to have the dish soap in it and the other one's going to have the yeast in it. If you just have one, that's fine too. You just have to rinse it out a little bit because we don't want the soap to mix in with that yeast. So I have 2 different tablespoons. And then you're going to want a measuring cup of a half of a cup. Okay, this is going to help us when we measure our hydrogen peroxide. All right, and then you'll notice that I have a lot of my stuff here. When I brought it over, I put it in a tray, and a tray is going to be really important for this because there is going to be a pretty big chemical reaction. Now, for those of you who have the Salon hydrogen peroxide, your reaction is going to be greater than maybe those of you who just got yours at the pharmacy or the grocery store, but there still will be a reaction. So if you have some type of tray that has some edges on it, that's going to be important to have in here so that we can kind of build our experiment inside the tray, and that way if something big happens, our tray should catch most of it. All right, so if you have all of those materials ready, we're going to go ahead and do our experiment. If you noticed, I'm missing something, pause it right now, look at your list that I emailed to you, and go grab it real quick. All right? Okay, so we are getting ready for elephant toothpaste. And what's really cool is after we do this experiment, if you want to go on to YouTube Kids or search the internet and type in elephant toothpaste, you can see some even larger scale experiments because they're using some different chemicals. But this is one that's safe for us to do at home. But it's really cool to watch some of those videos. All right, so here's what we need to do. First, we're gonna get protected. All right, get your safety goggles on. Okay. All right, so, I might need to wait, kind of fogging up a little bit. I'll put these on right before we do the big explosion. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do first. First, we're gonna get our 1/2 a cup of hydrogen peroxide. So you're going to take your measuring cup, 1/2 of a cup, 4 ounces, and we've got to get some hydrogen peroxide. So again, mine looks like this. Yours might look really similar, or yours might look a little bit different, but we're gonna go ahead, fill 1/2 of a cup, 4 ounces of hydrogen peroxide. Okay. Just gonna set this down for a second. As a reminder, if at any time you are falling behind, don't worry about it. Just pause the video and get caught back up. It's a little bit tricky for me to know if you're staying up with me when I'm just filming this to kind of a virtual audience. All right, so I am gonna put these on as I pour. You should have 1/2 a cup of hydrogen peroxide. You're gonna put your funnel in your bottle, and here's what I'd like you to do. With one hand, you're gonna hold kind of this bottle and the funnel so it doesn't move. We don't want this to fall off. We don't want this to tip over. I have it in my tray, and then I'm gonna slowly pour the hydrogen peroxide into my funnel, which will then go into my bottle. All right, kind of shake it off so we get all the hydrogen peroxide in there. Okay, so you should have your hydrogen peroxide is now into your bottle. All right, pull these up since we're done with the pouring. Okay, so your bottle should have 1/2 of a cup of hydrogen peroxide in it. Just gonna kind of close that up in case I knock it over. I don't want it to spill everywhere. All right, now we're gonna add food coloring. So if you don't have food coloring, it's okay, it's still gonna work. But I have some food coloring here. And even though I cheer for the Spartans, my favorite color is blue. So I'm gonna add my blue, and I'm gonna add about 10 drops. If you get more than 10 drops, not a big deal. But I'm gonna add that right into my hydrogen peroxide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So make sure you have 10 drops or around there of food coloring. Pull these off while they get all fogged up. Okay, so now my hydrogen peroxide is blue in color. Okay, so we've added 1/2 of a cup of hydrogen peroxide using our funnel. We had 10 drops of our food coloring. It can be any color you want for your elephant toothpaste. Mine will be blue, like Crest toothpaste, right? Okay, now we're gonna take our dish soap, and you're gonna have 1 tablespoon of dish soap. So this is my tablespoon measuring. Yours might look different like this, or maybe you don't have it and so you just have a normal spoon from your pantry, and that's fine too. That's about a tablespoon. You're gonna fill this with your dish soap, and then you're gonna pour it in. Now, I think I can pour mine in without the funnel, but if you wanna use your funnel, you can do that too. So we're getting about a tablespoon of dish soap. So mine's like on a pump here. You might be squirting yours out. Okay. All right. Put those guys back on as I mix the liquid. It's important to protect your eyes because right now we don't really know what's going to happen when I mix this with this. And so if anything splashes out or has some type of reaction, then I know that my eyes are protected. So I'm going to pour this in there. So you're pouring in 1 tablespoon of dish soap. Okay, that's about right. Stick that in there. And then it says kind of give it a little swish around. Nothing crazy, people. Just a little swish around. I've still got my protective eyewear on. Okay, so you can see a little bit of the bubbles in there from when I added my dish soap. Pull these off for a second. Okay, now we're gonna kind of push this aside because we're gonna work on our other mixture. Now, this mixture we're gonna kind of make right here, and then in a second we will pour it into that, but we wanna mix it up separately. And that's gonna help us have a better reaction. All right, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take that cup that you had, and you're gonna combine 3 tablespoons of the warm water and 1 tablespoon of the yeast. So I'm gonna use my different measuring spoon. It's still a tablespoon. I didn't get any bigger, but it just doesn't have all the soap in it. If yours still has the soap in it, I want you to pause the video, go wash it out real good, and then come back. Okay, so I'm gonna do 1 tablespoon of my yeast. Now, if you bought a little square packet, then that's a tablespoon. You can just rip that square packet and dump it all in there. But if you have like a container of yeast, you're gonna want to measure out 1 tablespoon. Now I'm measuring it over my cup. So if like a couple little pieces fall in, it's not a mess on my table, it's right there in my cup. So there's my 1 tablespoon of yeast. I'm gonna put it in my cup here. Tap that off. Close this up, so if it spills, if I knock it over, we're good. And then we're doing 3 tablespoons of warm water, and you do want it to be warm because that's gonna help the yeast dissolve. That means it's gonna kind of break down and become more of a liquid and be a part of the water. So 3 tablespoons of this warm water. So there's 1. There's 2. There's 3. Now, you're gonna wanna go ahead and mix this up so it kind of looks like melted ice cream. Now these 2 ingredients are safe. It's just water and yeast. We use yeast for like baked goods, like breads and dough and things that we need to rise. So if you're thinking, if I know that yeast makes things rise, that might give you some ideas about what would this do when I mix it there. Will something rise, get bigger? You might be thinking, well, when we did our other experiments, something reacted and made a bunch of bubbles and fizzes in our mouth or in the bag. It produced a gas, so maybe this will do that. Got some that's stuck on the side here. Just trying to get that off so it can kind of mix up. Okay. All right, so I think we're pretty good. Make sure yours is mixed pretty good. Looks kind of like a chocolate milk. Make sure it's not stuck on the sides. Well, mine is getting stuck on the sides. So I want to make sure I have it all. Okay. Alrighty, put that in there. Just happen to have a napkin laying over here from dinner. Okay, so here's where it's going to get really cool. We have our yeast and water mixture. And I'm going to, noticing mine is like really stuck on the edges, so I want to make sure I get some of that off. So if you're feeling with your spoon that it's kind of stuck on the edge, you might want to dig that out a little bit. Okay. All right, so get your funnel back out. This is going to help make sure that when we pour this in, it's going to go into our bottle like we want. So put your funnel back on there. Now, what we're going to do in just a second, we're going to put our safety goggles back on, and you're going to pour this in, and as soon as you are finished pouring this in, pull that funnel out. Because we don't want to keep the funnel in there when we are watching and observing what happens in our experiment. All right, so you're going to pour, take this out when you can. You can just put it in here if you want. Don't pull it out and get it all wet over your shoulder. But pour and take this off of the bottle so that you can see what happens. All right, so our funnel should be in. Okay. My goggles are fogging up. And yeah, my safety goggles are on. I'm going to kind of push this a little bit closer. I'm going to stand up just a little bit. Okay, so we're going to pour our yeast and water mixture in. As soon as we're done pouring it, we're going to take that funnel out, and we are going to watch what happens. Are you ready? Here we go. Whoa. Look at that coming out. Look, see how it looks like toothpaste being squished out of that bottle? That is pretty impressive. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I have a big enough pan. It keeps coming and coming. Look at our elephant toothpaste. It's still fizzing up. How does yours look? Does it look like mine? Oh my goodness. Mine is still coming out of the bottle. All right, this is a pretty cool experiment. I hope that you were doing it with me. I'm going to take my goggles off here so I can read a little bit about what is happening. All right, so we can learn a bit of science while you're exploring it. So the foam that we made, stuff that's coming out of here. Oh, real quick. If you put your hands next to it, what does it feel like? It's kind of warm, isn't it? I can feel the heat coming off of it. Now, this is safe enough for you to touch. You're not going to want to play in it a long time, and after you kind of touch it and things like that, you do want to wash your hands right away. Okay, but you can still touch it, but I'm feeling some heat coming off of that, and that's going to be something to kind of think about. All right, so if you have yours, you might be able to feel it's kind of warm. And you might think, well, we had warm water, Miss Vonner. Maybe, but there might be something else that's happening to cause some heat. All right, so the foam you made is special because each tiny foam bubble is filled with oxygen. That's what we breathe, right? The yeast acted as a catalyst, which sped up the reaction. That's why this reaction happened so fast, because the yeast was a catalyst. It helped it go faster. Okay, it broke apart all the oxygen that was in your hydrogen peroxide, and since it did it so fast, it creates all of these bubbles for us. So the bubbles are getting warm, right? We just felt that a little bit. If we put our hands right down by the foam and all these millions and millions of bubbles, it feels warm. It's because it created an exothermic reaction. All right? So in this exothermic reaction, not only did we create foam, but we created heat. Exothermic. Thermic, like thermometer, right? That takes the temperature, some heat. All right, the foam produced is just water, soap, and oxygen. Those are and the bubbles. So you can clean it up with the sponge. You can put it down your drain. If it got on your hands, you really, really, really want to touch it, that's totally fine. You just have to make sure you wash your hands afterwards. All right, so this is called elephant toothpaste because it looks like when it came out like if we were to squeeze a tube of toothpaste, it would kind of come out like this. And since we don't need a giant thing of toothpaste, what might need it? An elephant with their huge tusks, right? So this is a really cool experiment. I hope you enjoyed doing this as your final lesson in first grade. And if you just got to watch it, I hope that you enjoyed watching it too. Go ahead and you can Google with your parents watching elephant toothpaste and you can see some even more huge experiments using some different chemicals. But I have enjoyed doing these science experiments with you. I hope that you enjoyed doing those with me as well. And we as a first grade team are so proud of you for sticking with your learning all the way until the last day of school. We can't wait to see you in person in the fall when you'll be really big, proud second graders. And we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful summer. All right, until then, bye-bye.